box come up on the screen. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for everybody for coming along. I really do appreciate it. Just a little bit of background about what I do is I work with a lot of small business owners around business growth and personal development, and essentially support their business owners in what they're trying to do and give them some skills to help them that they can implement into their business to help them grow their business, and also act as a bit of a business sounding board for them as well. So somebody who sits outside the business to help them out. And a common problem that I have with people that I work with, or people that I work with, a common problem they have is really the generation and securing of new business. It's the hardest type of business. New business is the hardest type of business to secure. It really is. What we've done is over the last few sessions, we've looked at the sales process. We've been stepping through the sales process. And if you want to see those previous videos or this video once it's been finished, what we'll do is we'll put a link in the chat so you can see them because they're actually up on YouTube. But what we've done so far is we've looked at the sales process and we've covered prospecting, qualification, and how to pitch the perfect solution. So today what we're doing is we're looking at the next part of the sales process, which is handling objections. And feel free to ask any questions as we go along. You know, I'm more than happy to sort of like deal with questions as and when they arise, rather than people forget them and then go away thinking, oh, I should have asked that. So for me, the objection handling stage of the sales process is really where it starts to get towards the business end of the sale. And it's a point where a lot of people struggle. In fact, often the biggest reason people fail to follow up is they've offered their solution, but they're nervous about being told no. They're worried about having some form of confrontation. They're worried about having to justify the proposal that they've put forwards or whatever. So as a result of that, what they often do is they ignore that part of the whole process, which actually is the wrong thing to do, because if you don't follow up, then what you can do is you can end up in a position where you know, you've just wasted the whole work that you've put in, the proposal that you've made, and all of that side of things. So it's this handling objection side of things is a really important part of the whole sales process. So in sales, what we often do is we talk about the problem and the pain. So the problem is usually something that clients will verbalize. For example, in my business, potential clients will often struggle and talk to me about their cash flow, or their cash flow might be an issue for them. Cash flow may be poor. They might not be getting money running through the business as they want to. However, the pain is the thing that really drives the problem. It's that unspoken thing that people don't like to talk about. So, for example, this is quite a real world situation for me, and I might have a client talk to me, and they'll be talking about their cash flow, and they'll say something along the lines of, if my cash flow is poor, my real worry is I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. Then they go into, I might not be able to pay the tax man. I might not be able to pay my staff. I'm worried the business will fail. I'll end up in huge debt and I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage. I could lose my house. Now, that escalates really quickly, but that's really what it is. It's that pain, it's that fear behind the situation that they've got going in. So when you see how that can escalate, and I've had that with a number of clients over the years, that they've had that sort of real fear that you've done, and it's about identifying that pain. And what you're doing is, when you're providing a solution to somebody, you're really solving the pain that drives the problem. And once you get your head around that, it changes the way that you have a conversation with somebody. So anyway, those of you that have been on this call before, I know there's a couple of you that have, or calls with me before, may have seen this or will have seen this. And this is a standard, fairly typical, simplified sales process. But I just wanted to summarize it because there are things that we've covered in previous webinars that are relevant to what I'm going to be talking about later on. So we start with the prospecting side of things. When you've been prospecting, if you know exactly who your target market is, you've been approaching that target market. So you've been using prospecting techniques that attract your target market to you directly. So it could be networking that you've been doing. It could be social media. It could be SEOs. You could be running webinars. You could be speaking at events. It could be a whole manner of different prospecting techniques that you've been using. So what you've done is you've built your prospecting list up. You've researched the businesses that you're wanting to work with. You know the type of clients that what you work well with, and you've researched them. It may be coming down to things like you've looked at their the business size, you've looked at the turnover that they've got, you've looked at various different factors that you've identified are important in businesses that you want to work with. And because you know that market and because you already work with that market, you really understand their challenges and their pain points. So what you've done is you've been very structured in your approach, and you've built yourself this fantastic list of people that you're wanting to approach. You then move into the pre-qualification and the qualification phase. So the pre-qualification is where you do your desk research. It's where you find out about the company. You find out if they're a good payer or not. You find out if they're the type of company that you want to be talking to. You find out if you're talking to the right individual, the right decision maker within the company, and all those sorts of things. And that you do that as the pre-qualification phase before you actually start talking to them. Then when you start talking to them, and for me, qualification is actually the bedrock of any sales process. So this is where you have a brilliant conversation with them. And you've used various different techniques that we've talked about in the previous webinars to get them to open up about the challenges and the problems that they're facing. You go through this phase and you start to build. This is where the relationship build really happens, and you end up building, or you can build quite a solid relationship with those people. You ask lots of questions. You remember that, you know, when you're asking those questions, it's in the forefront of your mind that these questions aren't about you. They're not about the services that you offer. They're actually about the client and the problems that they're facing and the solutions that you can offer them that is going to make their life or their business or whatever it is easier. And remember, knowledge is power. So the knowledge that they give you and you get out of them will serve you well in the latter stages of the whole sales process part. Then you go into the solution and the pitching phase. So this is the part of the process where you've done all your qualification, you know what the problem is, and you're then putting your solution towards them. You've utilized all of the information that they've told you. They've told you the problems that they experience, and you've determined their pain points. Again, some of those pain points, it might be that they've told you those directly. It might be that because you're experienced in working in that particular industry or that particular profession, you know the standard pain points that people are experiencing in their position. And what you've done is you've drawn issues to those problems and those pains within your proposal. You provided them with a solution that has solved these pain points, and you've structured it in a very well thought out and organized fashion. And then you physically presented that to them. And when I mean physically presented it to them, what I'm talking about here is actually you give them the proposal, but then you might go and see them, or you might have a Zoom call, or you might have a telephone call so you can talk them through the solution that you've done. And I always say that's really important, because if you just sending an email through with a proposal, the problem that you experience is they are able to then draw their own conclusions from the things that you've written down, and those conclusions may not necessarily be correct. And what you're able to do is you're able to give them a really, really good steer. So presenting the solution, particularly in a higher value sale, I feel is really, really valuable and really important, and something that shouldn't be overlooked. So you've gone through all those processes, and we've covered those three sort of stages in previous webinars. Then we come on to the objection handling side of things. So firstly, what do I mean by objection handling? So basically what it does is it refers to the process of addressing and overcoming a prospect's concerns, their doubts or hesitations during a sales negotiation. And these objections can relate to various different things like the product or service, pricing, timing, trust, or other factors. But what it's actually doing is it's preventing the prospect from making a purchase or agreeing to a proposal going ahead. So objection handling really here is a crucial skill. What it does, it demonstrates your ability to engage with your prospects' needs, establish credibility with them, and then create a solution that's tailored to their individual concerns. So remember, when I talk about the qualification process and a part of the sales process, they've told you the challenges they face and what's important to them. And in the solution and pitching part of the sales process, you've told them what you're going to do to overcome the challenges they're facing. Your objective in the objection handling side of things is basically to advance the decision. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to move that prospect closer to a favorable decision by resolving any barriers that are effectively holding them back. And you do this by really doing four key things. Firstly, it's identifying and drawing attention to the root cause of the problem. It's showing empathy to reassure the prospect that their concerns are valid and solvable. It's providing accurate information or additional context to dispel their doubts. And then finally, it's about highlighting the benefits and the relevance of the offering that you're going to address about their specific objection. So those of you know me that all will know I always say that having a tried and tested process is really important. Business processes help you keep on task, they prevent errors, they ensure all bases are covered, and they increase the speed and task with which something can be accomplished or a task can be accomplished. Now, we're used to putting process in place for the operational sides of our business, but often what we don't do is we don't put a process in place for the other areas of the business, maybe the softer functions of the business like sales or marketing or whatever. But if you can put a process in place for across your business as much as possible, it helps because it does ensure that you follow a routine and actually less slips through the net when you're following a process in exactly the same way that if you were doing a manufacturing process, you're going to make sure you're putting the screws in the right place if that's where it is on the production line or whatever. That's a very crude analogy, but there you go. That's kind of the side of it. So this is the simple process that you can really use during the objection handling, and it will allow you to handle objections with more regularity and more consistency. But what it also does is it just means that you're not missing anything out. So the first and most important thing is the listening side of things. I say to people all of the time when they're talking about sales, you have two ears and one mouth, and what you need to do is use them in proportion. I am a salesperson by profession. It's what I spent most of my career doing is working in sales or supporting people within sales. So it's not about talking all of the time, which is ironic considering I'm doing this webinar, I'm doing nothing but talking, but that's the whole principle behind sales. It's about listening to the objection. Don't interrupt. Let the prospect tell you what their concerns are. Then we move on to the next stage. Repeat that back to them. What it does is it shows them empathy, it shows them understanding, and it shows them you understand their concerns. What's really funny about this is there are times when I've done this, repeat it back to the client, and then they've turned around to me and said, crikey, that sounds ridiculous when you repeat it back to me. Sometimes that is something that they hear back when they hear it back to themselves. They think, well, that objection is actually really ridiculous, but it doesn't always happen. But usually, that's what you have to do is you have to repeat that back to them. Like I say, it shows that empathy and it shows that understanding. The next part of it is understand their objection. So what you can do here is you can sort of have a further Q&A, delve deeper, try and get to the bottom of what the root cause of their objection actually is. And sometimes what they'll do is they'll come out with something and you realize that there's been a miscommunication somewhere along the line. And actually what you're able to do there is you're able to clarify their misunderstandings, the things that they might have interpreted differently or may not have necessarily got what you were trying to say in the first place, which is why this is so important. Because if you don't do this, if you don't clarify what their real objections are, you're going to go away, you're not going to get the sale, and you're not going to really understand why. So this is the whole point about that whole understanding piece. Once you've done that, this is where a strong qualification really takes the conversion of the sales process. A strong qualification in the sales process comes into its own. So let's pretend the client has given you a very comprehensive overview of their challenges and what those challenges mean to them. What they've done is they've identified the pain in they've identified those challenges, and from that you really understand their pain, the thing that underpins the problem that they're experiencing. You respond to them, highlighting the problems that they've expressed and how the solution that you've offered resolves that problem. It might be that you have to explain it in a slightly different way. If there are a number of solutions that you're providing, it may be that you get them to clarify an order of importance with regards to those problems, and then you can prioritize a solution according to the weighting of the different problem. So for example, if they've got 4 or 5 different issues that they're wanting to express, and they say, well, this is an issue, this is an issue, this is an issue, etc., what you can do is you can delve down and say, well, what's actually the most important thing? What's the thing that you really need resolving more than anything else? What that does is that allows you to, like I say, to really, really dive deep, and then you can respond to that and you can deal with that in a much more comprehensive fashion, and you can reassure them that the solution that you're offering is actually going to provide them the solution that they require. And it's going to you can almost paint a picture of what their life will look like once that solution has been resolved. So the last thing is you confirm the solution with them and make sure they're happy. And that's just simply, does that answer your question? Does that help you? Does that reassure you? Something along those sorts of lines. Now, they'll come back with one or two answers, yes or no. If the answer is no, you can then ask them again, well, why not? What am I missing? What have I not touched upon? What is it that's really, really bothering you? And then you can then go back and start this process again and work your way through this process. Now, obviously, you're not going to do this ad infinitum. You know, you might get to a point where you're just thinking, actually, I'm banging my head against a brick wall, and you know, the client isn't ready to buy for whatever reason. But actually, if it's a genuine concern that the customer has got, then you can alleviate their fears by just doing this process and potentially repeating this process. So let's go back to my original real world scenario. So what often happens is my clients come to me. When my clients come to me, they usually come to me in a point of distress. And there's something going on within their business. More often than not, it has something to do with cash flow. It's a cash flow issue. And when I delve deeper into why they have cash flow problems, it comes down to a combination of maybe a few primary reasons. Firstly, it could be, for example, that their clients are paying them late, which is actually a relatively easy fix. It could be that their sales are lower. So we explore how we can get their sales operating in a more efficient way. It's a bit more in depth to get the sales, to improve the sales process and everything else, but it's still something that's very solvable. It might be that they're not managing their finances very, very well. You know, they haven't got the finger on the pulse when it comes to their numbers. Again, it's a fairly easy thing to solve. And it could be that they are just too cheap. They're doing loads and loads of work, but the margins are really, really poor, which, in all honesty, is the easiest thing to solve, but the hardest thing to persuade people to do, which is put the prices up. But that's one of those things that that does resolve it. There are other reasons, but generally speaking, it's one of these four reasons. So my response to them is usually centered around one of these points. For example, I would say something like, you've mentioned that your clients are paying you late when the cash comes in. It seems to go straight out again. So what we'd do is, first thing we'd implement is put a cash flow process, a credit control process into place. And what that will do is and we would measure how that's working by looking at your debtor days. Then I'd ask them if they had a cash flow forecast. So the response, generally speaking, when you ask people if they've got a cash flow forecast, is no. And usually they follow it up with, because it's a waste of time. So my response to that is not if it's done properly and it's managed correctly. And I've worked with clients who've totally transformed their business purely by getting a real handle on their cash flow issues. And then what I'll do is I'll give them some examples of clients that I've worked with and how a cash flow forecast has actually transformed the way that they run their business. So again, what I'm doing there is I'm dealing with the objection, I'm understanding where the issue lies, and then I'm giving them a solution, and then I'm explaining why it works, and I'm giving social proof, if you like, as to how that will happen. And then I ask them if that makes sense. So that's my confirmation element. My confirmation, does that make sense with you? So just to put a caveat at this point, so I've told you that obviously cash flow is quite often the primary concern, and yet I'm speaking to clients who struggle with cash flow, and I'm charging £500 a month to potentially to clients who are having cash flow issues. My job here is to ensure that my £500 a month that I'm charging the clients or my clients isn't a barrier. So more often than not, in my experience, the pricing isn't the primary objection. It usually is an excuse. It often comes down to a fear of something like, what if this doesn't work? It's then my job to reassure them that it will work, that I have a track record of making it work, and that I have the skill set that can give them to succeed. Because in all honesty, what they want is they want to succeed. They want to succeed, and they want to succeed in their goals. They've already told me what these goals are. So again, I can reiterate these goals back to them and paint that picture of the glorious life that they're wanting to experience back to them, because that's what they've told me, that's what they're after. And generally speaking, when you're talking to people, they're not asking to have like a fleet of Porsches parked on the driveway. They're not asking for, an armful of Rolexes or holidays in the Caribbean every couple of weeks. They're not asking for anything unreal. What they're generally asking for is a life where they can work and they can earn money and they can put food on the table and actually just feel comfortable rather than having some kind of glorious billionaire lifestyle or whatever. So using price is an easy objection. It's one of those things that a lot of people do. Most people feel that price is difficult to overcome, so they'll use it as an objection because it encourages the selling party to immediately reduce the cost. It's the simplest way to remove that barrier. And actually, this is the last thing that you should do. If someone gives you a pricing objection, don't think, oh, okay, well, I'll give you a 20% discount or a 10% discount or whatever. Because what that's doing is that's devaluing your service, it's devaluing your product. If price is a genuine concern and it is a real world objection, and you've done that exploration and you realize that that is the issue, what you can then do is you can start taking away certain products or services that you're offering. So, for example, in my case, what I do is I work with people on a monthly rolling basis. If price is really an issue, but they have a very, very genuine concern, I'll do a one-off session with them, which is cheaper, but it's still at the same hourly rate that I would normally be charging. It maintains my value, but it's offering them a solution that works for them, and it's offering a solution that works for me as well. It shows everything also has a cost associated to it, and you can take away things, but it shows that everything has a cost associated, and the more you take away, the more you reduce the cost. And it helps the client understand they can't have everything if they're not prepared to pay for it. And I will always show value that they're going to get. I will paint the picture of what the future looks like without the problem that they're going to get. So that's how you do the handling of the objection side of things. The next stage is the closing element to it. Quite simply, the easiest and most feared part of the sales process. You say to somebody, just close the deal, and people have that look of horror on their face. Oh my God, how the hell am I going to do that? I don't want to ask for the order. That sounds too salesy. It sounds too pushy. I know so many people that do the difficult bit. They go through they go through the whole sales process, but they won't ask for an order. And as a result, they don't close the deal. And this is crucial, and it has to be done at the end of the objection handling phase. It's not something that you can wait and leave. You have to ask for the order there and then. It may be that the client just needs to consider the purchase. However, you still need to ask. They may need to go away. They may need to consider the purchase. They may need to talk to other people and get a second thing, but you still need to ask for the order. So here are some examples of how to close. Now, the one thing I would say in sales is we like our fancy names. It makes us feel important. It makes us feel like we are actually really, really knowledgeable and really clever within the business world. But actually, the names don't mean a great deal. But a direct close is when you're literally asking the straight question, are we in a position to go ahead? It's very straightforward. It's very direct. And then you're just asking that question. You've been through everything. You've handled the objections. They're happy with the objections that you've got. You'll probably get a feeling that the client is actually ready to purchase. Are we in a position to go ahead? Yes or no? It's a simple answer. If they say yes, happy days, you've won the order. Sometimes when you're talking to someone, you're having a conversation that you just know that is going really, really well. You just assume you're getting the order. So with me, I use my standard close is let's get a date in the diary, right? And that's what I stand to say. Let's have a date in the diary and let's get this going. Now, it's very easy for me to do that. I've done it in the past where I've been in front of somebody and they actually turned around to me one day and um, they said, you'll never sell to me right at the beginning of the conversation. You'll never be able to sell to me and you will not be able to close me. And I went, okay, that's fair enough. And we carried on. We had a conversation. We had a really, really good chat, really understood their problems. We talked through everything. I went through my sales process. And then at the end of it, I got my diary out and said, should we schedule the next meeting? And the lady went, yeah, absolutely. Let's get it in the diary. And then I just turned around to her and went, you have just been closed. And she called me a few names. Most of them were fairly impolite, and which made me chuckle. But then she said, okay, yeah, I get it. You can close. And I said, well, that's it. It's not like but I know that you're ready to go ahead. It's not that I've closed you. I'm just sort of moving the conversation forwards. And it was a really good lesson for her. An alternative close. This is typically when you've got a couple of different solutions or a couple of different options. And the client is having to make a decision on which way they want to go. So what you're doing is you're giving, should we start with option one or should we start with option two? Or should we start with option three? Depends on what you're actually looking to do. And then you finish that off with where would you like to start? Which is the most important thing for you? So that's if you're offering a multiple of different solutions for them. Well, not the last one. The next one is the pressure close, which obviously, if something is time bound, if you're selling a service that you're reselling a service or something like that, maybe it's a holiday that you're reselling or something along those sorts of lines, and the holiday can fluctuate in price, you might use the line of, obviously, these holidays prices can change. If you want to secure that price, you can go with it now. That's kind of a pressure close that we use. And the last one is a rebound close. I quite like this one for the simple reason that it's quite cheeky. So the client might turn around to you and say, I'm concerned about the financial outlay, for example. And what you do is you answer that concern and then you say, I'm ready for next Tuesday. So for example, that's fine. We can sort out the budgetary constraints as we go along and work within those constraints. I'm free next Tuesday. Does that work for you? So what you're doing is you're answering their concerns straight away, and then you're going straight in with the close. Now, you have to do what works for you. I like to use things that are conversational. I don't like to be putting pressure on people. The way I look at it, if people are ready to buy, they're ready to buy. More often than not, if they've reached out to me, then there is a genuine concern there, so they have a real need. But I'm not one of these people that's going to give the hard sell to somebody, because actually, when you do give a hard sell to somebody, it doesn't actually work. This process that I've talked through over the last 3 or 4 webinars, basically what it is, it's not about the hard sell. It's about understanding your client, understanding their needs, providing them with a solution that's going to work for them, dealing with any concerns that they've got, and then starting to work with them. And that's the process that it's got. But it is all about the client. It's not about you. And I can't stress that enough. So that basically sort of like concludes that side of it. Has anybody got any questions on that? Alex, go for it.
Yeah, that was really interesting. Thanks, Steve.
No problem.
I I go through this sort of the sales funnel that you described, and what the sticking point I have is I really want to talk on the phone to a prospect if I, especially after I've pitched a proposal or prices to them, but
Yeah.
very often they don't answer the call. So I'll leave a message and then wait a few days for a response, and I often don't get one. So I'll send an email and then I'll get an objection in the email, and it's hard to go back and forth with emails,
Yeah, absolutely.
to address any concerns. Have you got any suggestions about either getting a response on the phone? Because maybe I'm going about that wrong, or is there anything in any way you can put it across in an email that would work as well? Because I've always picked up the phone, but it seems to me, I don't know if other people experience this, it seems people nowadays are less interested in speaking on the phone.
Yeah.
They just prefer to send an email or.
Yeah, it is a major problem. Ghosting is one of those issues that most people experience, and I noticed David nodding in the background there as well, with describing exactly what you've got. So there are a couple of things that you can try, Alex, that might help you. So the first thing is, when you are ready to submit the proposal to them, you could arrange it so you do the proposal over a Zoom call with them. So what you're doing is you're presenting that proposal to them over a Zoom call. And what I mean by that is you sort of send them a message saying, hi Jane, I've got the everything's all ready. I've got everything prepared. I'd really love to talk you through the proposal. Could we arrange a Zoom call? Now, that's one way of doing it. The second way of doing it, they might turn around and say, no, just send it through, just email through and I'll have a look at it. There's nothing you can do about that because that's what they've actually requested to do. The second way that you could do it is, once you've done that and send the Zoom call through, you could say, well, let's arrange a follow-up meeting so I can talk to you about the proposal. And you can put Calendly link in place, or you could put You could send them a meeting request or whatever it might be. So what it does is your follow up, if you like, is actually going to be in their calendar. So they're expecting a call from you, and they know that it's almost like a meeting that's been arranged. You can do it over the phone, you can do it on a Zoom call, you could do it face to face, depending on how you want to do that. But
Mm.
what you're doing is you're saying, right, okay, this is the part of the proposal. And then you're saying to them, what I'd love to do is talk you through the proposal as well. Let's have a meeting to do that. So you send it through to them, and then you arrange a meeting at a separate point. So at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning, what you're going to do is you're going to have that conversation with them. They know it's in the diary. It's more difficult for them to cancel. You send them the Zoom link or the Teams or the Google Meets link or whatever you choose to use. And then from there, what you're doing is your appointment is scheduled, so you have that time that's dedicated to them, and then you can go through that. Now the probability is they're not going to cancel that. If they do cancel that, you ask for a time when you can rearrange that call. It might be that something has come up, but it's in that diary. What it's doing is it's showing them they're showing them their concerns are important to you, and actually you're putting them first. And you can do it in a really, really polite way, but actually what it's meaning is you're getting that conversation, you're able to have that conversation with them at some point. So try that, one of those two things, and they might help you have more success in actually speaking to them. But I'm a big fan of actually delivering the proposal verbally as well as on paper, and
Mm.
saying to them, what I'm doing is I want to present it to you, and then I'll send it to you afterwards, because that way I can talk you through, and you can tell me any concerns that you may have there and then. And what you're doing is, when you're doing that presenting of the proposal, you're going through the solution phase, and then you're going straight into the objection handling phase. And actually what you're doing is you're speeding that sales process up within that sales funnel. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. Thank you. Yeah.
No problem at all. No worries. David, go for it. You're on mute, David. And you're back on mute again. I can't hear you. I can't hear you now. No. Okay, write it down in the chat. Yeah. Alex, create a video PF of your presentation. Yeah, that's a good point as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a really good way of doing it.
yeah, that is good actually. Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks,
yeah.
David. Yeah, I might try that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I like that one. I've not heard that one before, David. I'm going to use that now. I'm going to, yeah. Winning at life.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I think that's a really, really good point, actually. So if you could obviously create a video presentation. The one thing I would say as well, though, that's a great solution, because actually they're getting to see you and they're getting to talk, and you can talk through it. But then what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to handle the objections as well. And if you're creating a video presentation, you can't handle those presentations. That's actually a really, really good way of making you totally stand out from your competition, because you can almost guarantee that those people won't do that. And actually, when you're verbalizing something, communicate 7%. What's it? 7% of communicating is the kind of like the industry standard. When you're verbalizing it and you're presenting it in such a way, you can use expression, you can use your hands, you can talk, you can use intonation in your voice. So somebody might read something and they might look at it and think, well, that reads strange. But actually, when you're presenting it to them, you can present it in a way that actually you want it to come across. So that might actually help you. But I like that. I'm going to actually, yeah, I'm gonna steal that one, David. Yeah, you've got sound now.
yeah.
Can
Thanks,
you hear
David.
me?
That's good.
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, so look, just seriously, just briefly, what I'm having to do, just for everybody on the call, for some of the current like customers right now, I'm having to put them on pro forma before I even do anything.
Mhm.
Because the thing is, you do these quotations, and we can spend hours and hours on quotations for doing what we do, and we get zero feedback from it. Yeah, you do these video, you do these calls, etc. The decision makers are not in the call. That's the problem. So what we do now is we make a video. Okay, so we, because it cuts to the chase, we're not taking questions. We send it in and say, if you have any objections or if you have any questions, please come to a video meeting with us. Whatever you choose, Google Teams, Zoom, whatever. Yeah, and take it from there. But Alex, the big thing, and for everybody on the call, is in person. I am prepared to come to you to show you what I do. I mean, I've gone as far as field as India and like Saudi Arabia in recent times, okay, to show people what we do. All right,
Mm.
it's up to them to buy into that. Obviously, you want to keep your costs to a minimum. Don't get me wrong; not everybody's got money to splash around, and that's what I'm not about. But the thing is getting those decision makers in and on those calls. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
David,
absolutely, absolutely
David,
crucial.
how do you, sorry, how do you, when you make your video presentations,
Yeah.
are you adding graphics and text into that, or is it just literally used
No,
to?
it's no. So basically, you got a script. So
Yeah,
in front of your laptop, okay. So you might have your camera there, or you might do it with a mobile phone with one of those ring lights, yeah. And you
yeah,
speak into it, and you just speak from the heart, But what your script. If you got your script up on screens that you can read, you know, it, that's it. It just opens up and it's different, yeah.
mm,
If we keep doing the same old, nothing happens. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a bit of an issue for us in our, and we are generations now below us, that have come, like in the Gen Y, Gen Z. They don't like the calls. They don't like videos. They want texting and they want emailing. They want to hide, and I
yeah,
can't. It's a poor. Well, obviously, it's the way education is. It's the way parenting is. It's a very poor attitude. Yeah, and if you've
yeah,
got somebody working with you that won't contact a customer that you've tasked them to do, what do you do with them? Or what
mhm,
I can say is that you have to let them go
mhm,
because it's no good for your business. Your business is you. It's you're selling you. And obviously, if you've got trusted people that you work with, they sell you as well. They sell themselves. They sell the company. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. But guys, I've put my contact details on the side there. If anybody wants to like make a contact, whatever, I have to go because I got a call with somebody in 1 minute. Steve, catch up with you later. Yeah.
yeah, lovely. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for
Okay.
coming along. Really
Lisa,
appreciate it.
lovely to meet you. Everybody else on the call, I can't quite see, but cheerio for now. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Take care. I think that was some pretty good advice there. I do like that actually. The video call. The other thing I was going to say as well, Alex, is what you can potentially do is you can put other examples into it, and you can talk people through the examples. You can talk people through maybe challenges that you faced with the photos, or is it just photography you do, or do you do videography as well?
No, just
Mainly
photos.
photography.
Yeah, yeah,
So you could maybe talk about lighting challenges that you might have had, or you can talk about operational operational pitfalls that you could have had within particular photos. You can go into a lot more depth, certainly on a video proposal, than you would be able to do on a written proposal, or something along those lines. But that's what I would say is it's worth trying to incorporate that. And it is about making yourself stand out differently, and giving yourself, I suppose, a reason for people to think about you differently, rather than just necessarily think about, oh, Alex is just a photographer. This is what he does. He's like every other photographer, run-of-the-mill photographer, or whatever. It's about how you can differentiate yourself and make yourself sort of stand up above all of the other people, and
yeah,
that's what it's about. Um, and I totally agree with what David said. Getting in front of people is absolutely the best way of dealing with it. I like to look into the whites of people's eyes. I like to shake their hand. I like to sort of get to know people that I'm talking to. Don't get me wrong, I've got clients that I work with all over the country that I've never met. But I build a relationship with them by looking at them and talking to them and everything. And I think the one thing that really came out of COVID that's really positive is everybody using things like tools like Zoom as an everyday tool now, rather than just using the phone. So it's worth trying.
mm,
So has
mm.
that helped you?
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, it does unblock me a little bit on that. Thing.
That's good. That's what it's
I feel
that's
like
what it's about.
yeah, I
I
feel
mean,
like
if you wanted to have a follow-up call at some point, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm easy to get hold of, and we can always arrange a one-to-one if that's what you'd like to do. I'm
okay.
more than happy to do that. It's not a problem for me.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Worries. Has anybody else got any other questions they'd like to ask? No, silence. No worries. Well, what I will do is I will well, we might as well end the call then. Thank you very much for coming along. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate your time.